We had a crazy news weekend in Canada over the last few days. Between the Blue Jays making the World Series and Doug Ford's Reagan inspired anti tariff ads going viral, it's been busy. But something else interesting happened this weekend. Canada became a signatory to the UN Convention on Cybercrime. So I decided to dive into it. Now, this is a tough one, right? Because on the one hand, I get it. Cybercrime tends to have an international component. It makes sense that, at some point it's going to have to be dealt with internationally. You can have victims in one country, perpetrators in another country using infrastructure that spans multiple countries. So I get that the idea of having it addressed internationally is a good idea. But I'm going to give you the short answer to all the research I did, which is that I don't think this convention is actually going to work. And the reason is because there's no international definition of a cyber crime. That is actually a big problem. What different countries consider crimes is not universal. Like it's just not the same for everybody. So this convention is being widely criticized by privacy watchdogs, but also big tech companies, because it seems like in order to fulfill its promises, you'd kind of have to create this large electronic surveillance state, which nobody except certain maybe authoritarian governments want. And it has not a lot of protection for human rights. And so like an example concern is that, what's a cybercrime in your country may not be a cybercrime in my country. So like, here in Canada, we can, routinely and publicly criticize the government as much as we want. That is not anything close to a crime here. But there are countries where that's not true. So you criticize the government on Facebook and all of a sudden you're committing a cybercrime. And so one of the things the convention does is it tries to set out at the beginning the things that you must make. Any state who signs up to it must make a crime if it's not already a crime in your country, right? So it's good stuff. It's like, illegal interception of private communications, or like tampering with ICT infrastructure, solicitation, grooming of children, sharing intimate videos without permission. So all things that, you could agree on. And maybe if the convention had just stuck to that and said, okay, so then everything is built on that. We're going to have this set definition of like 8 things we all consider crimes. And this convention is just about the facilitation of information sharing for those crimes. Maybe people would have got behind it, but it does this really crazy thing in the international cooperation section. Now, I got to be honest, I did not read the actual convention. I read the United Nations summary of it. But in the international cooperation section, it says that states who sign up are, required now to share evidence, not just from pure cyber crimes like those listed above, but also any serious crime. Serious crime being defined as a crime which carries a penalty of prison sentence of 4 years or more. Well, come on. I mean, that varies widely from country to country. Now, there are provisions in it, like it talks a lot about how countries don't have to share information if it contravenes international law, or if it threatens their sovereignty, or if it could lead to discrimination or prosecution based on things like ethnicity or religious belief, that it has to respect fundamental human rights and freedoms like expression, belief, religion, peaceful assembly. But we all know that some of the countries signing up to this don't already do those things. So what is the point? Right? So let's say you're a country like Canada who, like not driving into the details of where we may have screwed up, but at least have it written down on paper that, you have a freedom of expression, for example, or freedom of religion. So we're not going to go share with a country who doesn't offer its people the same freedoms, right? I think we don't have to, because it contravenes what human rights are by the UN. But a lot of the countries signing this, they don't do it. Like, we know that. So what is the point, right? And when you read about what, we sent somebody, I don't know who we sent, some diplomat or something to sign it. And the statements are just so empty. It's like, okay, yeah, we all agree cybercrime is a problem. So we're all going to sign this convention, except we all know that we can't actually do much with it because a lot of the countries signing it don't meet the definitional requirements that the Nations sets out on human rights. Like, I just kind of don't get it. Like, it's kind of this empty posturing. So another interesting thing in it is it talks about the creation of a 24/7 network to request cooperation on investigation, prosecution, and the identification, freezing, seizure of crime proceeds, um, mutual legal assistance, and extradition. Like, who are we going to use something that already exists like Interpol? I don't even know if Canada uses Interpol all that much. And like, if we're going to give these powers to an existing agency like Interpol, are they going to have a team of people being like, okay, yeah, country X you can share with country Y because they respect all these human rights? I don't think so. That just doesn't make any sense to me. So it seems that this convention is just, it's like a nice statement. Like, it's like this idea that, yeah, we all have to cooperate on this thing called cybercrime, but it tried to, I don't know, like bite off more than it could chew. Like, maybe if it just stuck to a really simple, clear, like, we're just going to deal with this one kind of cybercrime. Like, let's all get on board with fraud. Right? Let's define cyber fraud and say that we're going to work together to deal with cyber fraud by sharing information. Maybe they could have started somewhere, but to be honest, like, I get that some people are really worried about this, but I can't even see it ever coming to pass. Even though Canada's signed it, which, like, I'm not sure why we'd bother. I can't see it ever happening because there's such a burden on states. So it talks a lot about how when you sign it, you're committing to like prevention and the things that it talks about for prevention, like we know that other countries don't. We actually, when it comes to prevention, we're not really good at it ourselves. So I don't really understand why they bothered. Now apparently they've been working on this for like 8 years, and it was spearheaded by Russia back in 2017, and I'm thinking like, okay, there's a ton of cybercrime that originates in Russia. So if Russia's all that concerned about cybercrime, like, why doesn't it clean up what's happening in its own borders before it starts demanding that everybody else give it information and share information? And that, like, then it just starts to give you this weird, creepy feeling, right? Like, okay, so what are we really going after here? What kind of like, if now a state can request information on a serious crime, and how are they, like, what kind of proof would a state offer that their charges against somebody are legitimate? Because what they're looking for by sharing in this convention, by the provisions on sharing between states, is evidence. So they're asking a state, so one state would ask another state to share evidence to support like a prosecution. So presumably the state that wants the evidence doesn't already have the evidence to go to the other state and say, see, we have evidence that this is a cyber criminal. Because if they had that evidence, then they wouldn't be asking for the evidence. So what, like, the burden on the country receiving the request, like, how would that country ever verify that this was a good faith request, that this person that they were asking information on was a legitimate cyber criminal who was committing, like, millions of dollars defrauding seniors, and not just some dissident that a particular government wanted to shut up? Like, it's a nice idea. I don't really ever seeing it play out. I mean, I don't know. If you have any questions or comments, let me know. I'm not really an expert in all things UN. Like, I find it a lot hard to process anyway at that level. So I'd love to hear your perspectives. Like, I know that a lot of people are very, very concerned about government surveillance. The idea of working with authoritarian regimes, like the idea of Canada working with authoritarian regimes to share information on individuals for prosecutionary purposes, is legitimately creepy and scary. But maybe I'm missing something here. So give me your comments. I'd love to hear them. Otherwise, I hope everyone's doing great.